Over the last 25 years, I've had the privilege of interviewing and highlighting some truly interesting people. I mean, everyone who is anyone, both the famous and the infamous, from presidents and their first ladies to kings and queens, movie stars and pop stars, captains of industry, heads of state, sports personalities, innovative entrepreneurs, and some pretty fascinating everyday people. And today I am proud to introduce you to Dr. Susan Gitelson, a marketing and consulting business professional, entrepreneur, and philanthropist who believes in humanitarian values that encourage people now and in the future. Dr. Gitelson, it's a pleasure to say hello to you today.
Oh, hello, Star. You're such a kind introduction.
Well, I wrote it especially for you. um,
Thank you.
so Susan, why don't we just start out with the organization that you are most affiliated with at this time, MTIIC Corporation. Tell me what the mission is.
This is Magic Touch International I Squares Incorporated,
Got it.
but it's not the only business I've been in because the story of my life, uh, probably similar in some ways to the story of your life, is that I've had to adapt to different situations that I never expected. And therefore, I've had a number of careers, beginning with academia and then going on to entrepreneurship and business, and always philanthropic in my own small way.
Susan, why don't you take me through the different milestones of your career? And that way we'll have a little bit of a roadmap of what your life as a professional has been.
Oh, thank you for asking. I started out as an academic because I always loved to learn and to meet people and to ask questions and to be in discussion groups. And it was a wonderful life, I thought. And I went to Columbia, got 3 degrees, ended up with a PhD, and then was able to have my dream job, which was to be a professor of international relations and African studies at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, because I had written my doctoral thesis on United Nations assistance to Uganda and Tanzania. And I spent a year doing research and visiting different projects and really absorbing life and never discussing academia. What does that matter? I always want to ask people about themselves and what's important to them and what they're trying to do and what has happened to them. And I was an interviewer also in my own way. And this led to this marvelous job in Jerusalem, teaching about Africa, international relations, the world. But unfortunately, in the world, as we know now in the United States, there are wars. And Israel was attacked by Egypt and other Arab countries in the Yom Kippur War. It was the worst attack ever. And the universities had to close. And the African states broke diplomatic relations with Israel. So that was the end of my specialty. But it couldn't stop me. So the first thing was I was an advisor to students, and the Israelis tend to be very closed and they don't speak. And I was particularly concerned with young men who had been fighting in tanks and other things and seen other people die, and they couldn't talk about it. American, you and I will talk, we'll tell everyone. And the talking relieves a lot of the anxiety. So I felt, oh, this is marvelous because I'm an American. I'm going to bring these people out so that they can be at greater peace with themselves. So that was a vocation. And then because there was no possibility for tenure under these terrible circumstances, I came back to America. Of course, I'm an American. I love America. So that was a pleasure. And I went back to live with my mother. And I had to do something else because I didn't want to be, oh, a lecturer at this place and you have to run from one campus to another. It wasn't a profession. So I was very fortunate that I came back and I had a professional job and so forth. And then I joined a synagogue, and the director of activities told the man who was treasurer, I have someone for you. She's coming back. At that time, I was coming back from India, as it happened. But you'll like her. So suddenly I met this man. No, he was a dropout from Brooklyn College. You know, if I were a snob, but he told me a story that impressed me so much. And that was, he was one of the first American businessmen to go to China after Kissinger and Nixon opened China for commerce. And he had gone there 7 times before I met him. Now, that was an accomplishment. And then I got to know him. And he was such a warm, wonderful human being. And I found out that if anyone had a problem, he would go in to help. He didn't ask for praise or anything. He just was a good human being. And that's what I needed in life, you know, because we all, you knew more than I, all these famous celebrities. And so, yes, and most of them are full of themselves. We need real people.
You need real people.
Right, and real friends. Mm-hmm. So I was very fortunate. Who knew? And then he was a businessman, and he was divorced, and his horrible wife had never been willing to help him when he'd go to a trade show. She would stay in the hotel room and complain. So here I came along, and I was praising him all the time. My God, you're so terrific. You thought of this, and you did that, and you do, oh, this is wonderful. He couldn't believe it. So he invited me to a trade show, as it happens in Europe. And this Magic Touch icewares, he had aluminum ice cube trays engineered by General Motors, highest quality. I didn't use ice cube trays. I didn't know anything really about the products, but I care about people.
Yes.
So when people would come in, I would ask them to talk about themselves. And a gentleman came in from Switzerland. And I said, oh, Switzerland, I've been there. And you want the best quality. And he said, yes. And then I said, well, where do you sell your goods? And he said, oh, Nigeria. And I said, I've been there. You know, it's such a wonderful country. And he was amazed. So he ordered a container load of aluminum ice cube trays to be sent from General Motors to Nigeria. And it was the biggest order my friend had ever received. And this was beginner's luck. So that's how I got into business.
And it was just because you asked a question for human connection. Otherwise, there would have been no reason for this gentleman to make that purchase.
Thank you. Well, we're the same kind of people.
Mm. Human touch is always the thing. Human touch is always the thing.
Right. And how could I go into different careers, you know, without studying for another 20 years business and law? And the same approach, always ask the other person, what are you interested in?
Yes.
What are you looking for?
Which is why I do what I do. And I love these interviews because it gives me the opportunity to do that. Exactly. As I pay attention to your career achievements, I see that you've been involved with a number of civic organizations. And you alluded to a couple of them just a moment ago, but anything in particular that you'd like to bring to our attention?
Well, I have to give my father a great deal of credit. Every man wants a son, but my father didn't have a son. He had 2 daughters. My sister was interested in boys and clothes, you know, she's a regular girl. I was fascinated by everything. He was the agent for a British trading company, Calico Printers Association. I finally realized that Calico came from Calcutta, and we used to get cables from India and all over the world. And I was just a little girl, but it fascinated me. And then I read about Mahatma Gandhi, this great human being who helped his people gain independence. And so these are the things that fascinated me. And one thing led to another. So whenever I could, I traveled, I met people, I tried to explore different cultures. And, when I see you, it was so important to welcome Africans and people of African descent when it wasn't done all the time. So, of course, I did it. We see human beings, we don't see differences. You have a different background, you have a different color. No. That doesn't mean anything. We want to be with good people and help them. So I belong to a number of organizations. Was on the board, the Center for the Study of the Presidency. There were so many that I can barely remember all of them. But wherever I went, I always asked questions. I always met people and tried to assist them or at least understand them, because many foreigners come in and no one cares about them. And it's us, we as Americans have to welcome people, make them feel at home, make them feel appreciated. If we can be in group activities with them. Well, an example, I went to a board meeting of a certain organization, and I happened to sit next to a man, and he asked me, what do you do? And I said, well, I give awards. He said, really? We need awards. Well, it turns out that he was the president of the Center for the Study of the Presidency. And this was an organization that had annual meetings in Washington. And they brought in students from all over the country. And then they brought in President of the United States and the Senator, this. And he said, we need something. And I said, yes, the same idea of human values in international relations. And your students come from everywhere. Many of them have never been to Washington. They had no experience in anything. And yet they're being asked to write about these questions, and it wakes them up. And I had the honor of giving awards. I didn't choose the people, that was up to the organization, but I presented the awards and made people feel appreciated, important. And one of the special, of course, this is what you can do, of course. So, yes. But one of the advantages for me is that I would like to sit at the table and talk with the students and find out more about them, because their backgrounds were different. And one thing I noticed, I would sometimes sit at a table with people from a certain state, and they didn't talk to each other. Why? Well, half the group were from the prosperous part of the community, and others were working class, and they didn't have anything to do with each other. And of course, I was only too glad to be with all of them, and introduce them to each other. So these were the kinds of experiences that made me more of a person, because it's not enough. I mean, I'm sure you do this all the time. It's not enough to sit there and say, I have a degree and I have money and I have this. No, it's always, who are you? What's your background? Where are your parents from? Are they in business? Are they in agriculture? Tell me more about yourself. And this is great.
People love to talk about themselves. So it's a great opening line at all times. Susan, you told me a little bit about some of the awards that you've given out, but I know that there exists the Susan Gitelson Award at Columbia. Tell me what
Thank
that is.
you.
Yes, indeed. Tell me what that is and why was it named for you?
Thank you for asking, because I was told you were going to ask for the most important thing in my life, and this is it. What happened, even though I started out with very little money before I went into business and whatever, made some, not much. Um, I had always been in the awards business, and I established an award at Columbia School of International and Public Affairs for human values and international affairs. And this is more than 40 years ago. And it started out uh, for the best essay. And the faculty had to choose the people. I didn't dare make decisions myself, but I presented the awards and I would talk with the winners. And then STIPA, this Columbia School of International Public Affairs, decided to have groups, workshops of, let's say, 10 people, and they would go out and research some important issue in international affairs. They came from all over the world. They went to places all over the world, and I had a chance to talk with them, and it was just so wonderful. We just presented the latest group, and there were 14 people, not one, 14, and one of them happened to come from Nepal, and I have a friend from Nepal, so I was discussing that. But the whole idea, they were researching what to do about Lebanon. And these are real questions, and it's so important for young people who come from different backgrounds and who have often suffered themselves. If we think of the role of women in Iran now, any place you look, there are problems. And it's so important for us to empathize with others and to use intellectual tools to analyze the situation. What is the problem? And what are potential ways of dealing with the problem? We don't want problems to exist. Unfortunately, we can't eliminate everything we want to, but at least we want to help people. And we want to give them connections so that they won't feel lost and they can stay in this system at Columbia and whatever other university they wish, and explore the issues and write papers and go to conferences and get involved and just build up more. Well, I love this thing. So I decided to endow my award when I had a little more money, of course. And I've never been married. I don't have children. But these are going to be my spiritual children, because this award is going to last as long as I'm alive and for another 100 years and more.
I think that's so wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful. It's just leaving the world with something that says that you were here and you cared about these issues.
Thank you. Right. And not only that, you know what I picture about the future? Some people worry, what's going to happen to my body? I'll shrivel. I never think of that. What I think about is that someday, after I'm officially dead, I'm going to continue in these conferences, meeting students, meeting faculty members, finding out the latest issues, prodding them. Don't you think you could try this? And shouldn't you try that? Well, I have a whole future ahead. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's death? It's not something to laugh about, but
it's a wonderful way to approach it, that this one life can end, but lives should live on. I think it's a great way to approach it. You've been talking a little bit about philanthropy and the ways you give back, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are on the whole concept of philanthropy and being involved in a way that does leave a legacy.
Oh, it is marvelous. And it's best when it's not just an extension of the ego. Oh, I have my name on something or other. We see these multimillionaires and everything. No, it's very interesting that some of our wealthiest guys, Jeff Bezos, and so forth. Jeff Bezos has an earlier wife who is the greatest philanthropist around. She does research. Let's find the best organizations that are doing the best for other people. And then she gives them, she writes them a check, whatever it is, but she's not putting her name on anything. She's not looking for glory. She's looking to help people. Well, that's the finest form of philanthropy. And I admire her so much. And fortunately, there are others. Even Melinda Gates. It's interesting. It's the wives of, the widows of, the divorced wives of the guys who've made the big money. But they maybe they'll give big checks, but it's usually with the name on and so forth. And these are the people who really care about others and about the causes.
They probably were in and around money for such a long time that maybe these women, who I consider, sisters, decided that what money is supposed to be here for is to make lives better. And the more lives that you can make better, it benefits all of us in society. I know I've interviewed Melinda Gates before, and I know that her thoughts on giving back is as if it's a part of her DNA. And so the more we make our connection with giving back to others or giving a helping hand a part of our DNA, I think that's where society actually becomes its best form of self. So I appreciate everything that you have done and continue to do. We have some time, and I want to hear, with everything that you've done, what are your plans for the future?
I hope to be fortunate to meet more people like you, Star.
A kind thing to say.
Melinda Gates, and women and men. But there are so many women now, because women have been discriminated. The latest thing is the Southern Baptist Convention.
Yes, I read about
throw
that.
out the women.
Right, I read about that, and not allowing women to participate as pastors.
Right.
And to lead the congregation. And I am a very spiritual person, and I focus more on relationship with God rather than religion. And so I love learning about the world religions. And I'm Christian by faith. And when I read that about the Southern Baptist Convention, I thought to myself, in my faith, God has saved his most important revelations to come through women. So, a woman gave birth to Christ. The women who went to the tomb afterwards, there were women who the revelation came through first. So I always think to myself, if we are supposed to be incorporating religion into society and culture, we need to keep an open mind. And that's sort of been my approach. What is your approach?
Oh, we're sisters.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. So I guess to answer that question, your plan for the future is to continue doing what you've been doing.
Right. No, as I mentioned to you, because I have this endowed award, I can go on spiritually for another 100 years or 200 years. Why not?
Why not? Why not, indeed?
Exactly. You're welcome to do something similar. We want to inspire people. We want to empower people to help others. And actually, I wrote a book about my experiences. Giving is not just for the very rich, a how-to guide for giving and philanthropy. And the message was, or is always, help others. Instead of taking opioids, instead of feeling sorry for yourself, instead of destroying your own life. No, go out and see how you can help others, because we know there are many people who are worse off than we are, who need some kind of help. And even just listening to somebody else, you and I are listeners, and bringing people back from something that is destroying them. And then they feel better in themselves.
Yes, I agree.
It's I encapsulated this because that's what it's all about. It's not me, 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 me. It's how can I help you? And then you can help others.
And I normally, Susan, ask as my final question, what's the one thing you'd like a viewer of this video feature to walk away with? But you sort of answered my question, that the word help is reverberating in your mind, and you'd like to see that reverberate in society. Is there anything else that you'd add?
More people should be like you and me, sisters and brothers.
Absolutely. I am going to take that
everyone
as a compliment, because I certainly do appreciate it. Susan, thank you very much for reflecting back on your professional and your personal life, and how it's been a life dedicated to giving to others. And that life will continue into the next life. So thank you so very much.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'm so glad that we met and we're sisters under the skin.
Got it. Absolutely.